Robert Kennedy Jr. just dropped a truth bomb about Syria that will shock every single American. Yes, Robert Kennedy Jr., the nephew of the U.S. President John F. Kennedy, who was assassinated, appeared on Radio Sputnik to break down the truth behind the Syrian crisis. Kennedy writes that the U.S. decided to remove Syrian President Bashar al-Assad from power after he refused to back a Qatari gas pipeline project. If you look at the roots of this war, it's a pipeline war. It was a Sunni revolution that was funded by our allies, by Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and in many cases the soldiers of this revolution were trained and armed by the United States.
Et je suis conscient de la force de ce que je suis en train de dire. M. Bachar al-Assad ne mériterait pas d'être sur la terre.
Laurent Fabius menace de recourir, lui, à la force. Déjà, est-ce que c'est possible? Et quelle forme peut prendre cette intervention?
Mais évidemment que c'est possible. Ça fait 1 an et demi que c'est possible. ONU ou pas ONU, cette histoire de veto russe et chinois, c'est une indécence.
François Hollande, en la France, semble déterminé. Donc ça veut dire quoi? Il va y avoir une frappe la semaine prochaine si le Congrès donne son aval.
Ah oui, je pense que c'est... Alors,
oui, vous pensez que c'est...
Oui,
vous pensez
ça
que
me
c'est
rappelle...
sûr.
Ça, oui, ma réponse est oui. Mais ça me rappelle
Quand,
une
à votre avis?
Avant la fin de la semaine prochaine.
Une explosion énorme à Hama, en Syrie. 31 personnes au moins ont péri. Sur ces images, on voit les rebelles préparer apparemment le camion bourré d'explosifs qui sautera quelques minutes plus tard à un point de contrôle de cette ville du centre du pays, tenu par les forces gouvernementales. Un kamikaze a fait détonner le camion près d'une entreprise de véhicules agricoles. Il y a plusieurs dizaines de blessés, dont certains dans un état critique. Ça ne représente pas le peuple syrien, dit ce soldat. Ce terroriste est sûrement du Qatar ou d'Arabie Saoudite. J'allais en cours à Salamia, raconte cet étudiant, quand les explosions ont commencé. La première a blessé cette jambe, la seconde, mon autre jambe. Selon l'Observatoire syrien des droits de l'homme, le kamikaze appartiendrait au front Al-Nosra, proche d'Al-Qaïda, un groupe qui serait aussi responsable d'un attentat suicide la veille à un checkpoint à Damas.
Le dossier suivant, il s'agit de l'aide apportée au titre des grands projets à l'entreprise Campus Coqueril à Commercy pour la construction d'un centre de formation, une aide de 600 000 €. Madame Fontaine et Monsieur Villain.
Bon, je ne serais pas étonné qu'on intervienne sur ce dossier. On est déjà beaucoup intervenu en commission technique. Il y a un grand décalage entre la présentation de ce dossier et la réalité du projet. La présentation est bien pudique. On nous parle d'un centre de formation séminaire international qui offrira une infrastructure de pointe. Quand même, l'infrastructure de pointe et les formations internationales, c'est pas n'importe quoi. C'est de la formation à la guerre, à l'utilisation de tourelles de chars. Ça ne s'adresse pas à n'importe qui, parce que pour le moment, cette infrastructure va bien être construite pour un public très particulier qui sont des Saoudiens. C'est pas n'importe quoi, on apprend à faire la guerre à des Saoudiens, on n'est pas sûr qu'un jour on ne les retrouvera pas quelque part en face de nous sur un terrain quelconque, et c'est quand même un pays qui n'est pas exemplaire en matière de respect des droits de l'homme. On a certainement tous lu ou reçu des pétitions concernant 2 personnes emblématiques actuellement, Ali Mohamed Al-Nir qui est condamné à mort pour s'être opposé au régime, Raïf Badam qui est condamné à 1000 coups de fouet pour insulte à l'islam. C'est quand même, est-ce que l'argent des Lorrains, est-ce que cette entreprise a besoin de l'argent des Lorrains pour faire cette formation? Est-ce que tous les Lorrains seraient d'accord pour aider cette entreprise à former des Saoudiens à utiliser des machines de guerre. Nous, Europe Écologie, nous voterons contre ce dossier.
Monsieur Villain.
Oui, Monsieur le Président, en commission, on a évoqué ce sujet et vous avez précisé que cette subvention servirait à former du personnel militaire de l'Arabie Saoudite. On vous avait demandé de retirer ce sujet, vous le gardez aujourd'hui à l'ordre du jour. On se demande comment vous pouvez demander aux Lorrains de participer au financement d'une entreprise qui forme du personnel militaire d'Arabie Saoudite. Vous connaissez le respect des droits de l'homme de ce pays-là. Vous savez qu'il est géré par la charia. Aujourd'hui, on s'abstiendra. On votera contre, pardon, on votera contre.
Madame Leblanc, vous souhaitiez la parole? Oui.
Pardon. Oui. Je voudrais ajouter que par rapport au compte-rendu de commission, il me semble qu'il y a une erreur, parce que l'avis n'était pas favorable à la majorité. Il y a 2 personnes qui ont voté pour le dossier, M. Villemain et M. Spesman. M. Villain a voté contre, comme moi, et M. Guillaume s'est abstenu.
C'est bien cela, oui.
À moins que la voix du président compte double.
Non, vous avez raison.
Voilà,
c'est bien
donc
2 votes pour, 3 votes contre et une abstention.
Voilà. Je voudrais ajouter aussi
voilà.
que le message qu'on envoie à tous les défenseurs des droits humains, je voudrais qu'on se pose la question, quel est-il le message qu'on envoie aux défenseurs des droits humains? Parce que en soutenant la formation de militaires, on envoie clairement le message qu'on soutient le gouvernement tel qu'il est actuellement. Est-ce que c'est ça qu'on veut faire? Donc nous redemandons à ce que le dossier soit retiré, et auquel cas nous demandons vraiment à l'Assemblée de prendre ses responsabilités. Imaginez ce que c'est que de prendre 50 coups de fouet, la peau qui se déchire dans le dos. Hein? Ensuite, on est soigné. Je ne vous parle même pas d'anesthésie, parce qu'on imagine les conditions que subissent les gens quand ils sont torturés. Et on en remet une dernière fournée. Ils n'ont même pas réussi à aller au bout de la 2e série de 50 coups de fouet. C'est ces gens-là qu'on veut soutenir? S'il vous plaît, quoi.
Madame Bild, vous souhaitiez la parole?
Oui. Moi, je vais intervenir sur directement plutôt la partie économique. On a déjà dépensé beaucoup d'argent sur ce site suite au départ des militaires, il faut le dire. Donc maintenant, on nous fait revenir des gens. Et on promet de construire aussi une piscine et un centre nautique, parce que tous ces braves militaires, il faudrait les aider. Donc, par contre, on pourrait peut-être déplacer aussi, tant qu'on y est, la piste de ski d'Amnéville, qui est une catastrophe. Comme ça, ils auraient la totale, ils pourraient venir plus nombreux.
Qu'on ne parte pas dans tous les sens. Il n'y a pas de piscine dans ce dossier. Hein. Non, là, aujourd'hui, il n'y a pas de piscine. Nous aurons peut-être un jour, mais pas cette année, un dossier de la communauté de communes de Commercy qui reconstruit une piscine à Commercy, parce que sa piscine a 40 ans d'âge, ça sera autre chose. Sur le site, nous sommes bien tous d'accord, nous ne finançons pas la formation. Cette formation, elle est financée par le marché. Nous avons une demande. Attendez, laissez-moi aller jusqu'au bout, et après on mettra au vote. Et on va pas... Nous avons une demande d'un groupe industriel qui a besoin de former et ses salariés 6 mois par an, et pendant 4 ans, un marché avec le groupe General Mécanique, qui est un groupe canadien qui vend à l'Arabie Saoudite cette première vague de machines qui sont fabriquées par le groupe Cockerill, qui est sous-traitant du groupe General Mécanique. Pour cela, ils vont accueillir 6 mois par an pendant 5 ans, effectivement, les militaires qui vont utiliser et les mécaniciens qui vont utiliser ce groupe. C'est un investissement de long terme sur le territoire qui va permettre de former et ces gens-là la moitié de l'année, et d'autres salariés, d'autres entreprises lorraines et de l'entreprise CMI à travers le monde sur le site de Commercy. Donc notre aide, elle est à l'entreprise CMI, entreprise dirigée par un Lorrain, qui développe en Lorraine une formation, certes sur ce marché, et on entend tout ce que vous dites, et aussi sur d'autres éléments. C'est pour ça que nous maintenons le dossier et que nous souhaitons que l'on vote pour ce dossier. Pardon, j'ai Monsieur Villain et Monsieur Manoury.
Monsieur le Président, que vous le vouliez ou non, cette subvention sert à financer de la formation du personnel militaire d'Arabie Saoudite. Alors vous êtes en train d'essayer de nous transformer ça, mais la réalité, elle est bien là. Donc nous maintiendrons notre rejet de ce dossier.
Bien entendu. Monsieur Manoury.
Oui, Monsieur le Président, moi je ne fais pas partie de la commission économique. Mais au vu de ce que j'ai entendu, des arguments développés par les uns et les autres, parce que je pense qu'au-dessus de l'économie, il y a aussi la morale, le groupe Je suis Laurent s'abstiendra. Je vous remercie.
C'est noté. Madame Fontaine.
Oui, je veux bien entendre qu'on finance des bâtiments, mais on sait que ces bâtiments vont être construits pour recevoir. Alors, sur la communication officielle de l'entreprise, c'est pendant 7 ans des militaires du Golfe, quoi. C'est ça.
Je vous ai répondu pendant 6 mois par an et les 6 autres mois, je vous ai répondu. Je ne vais pas vous le redire ce que.
Oui, non, mais quand même, c'est pas.
Oui,
et puis même si c'est d'autres pays, si c'est des gens qui viennent d'autres pays, c'est quand même de la formation à faire la guerre.
Ok. Écoutez, je vous propose de mettre au vote. On a donc vote contre du groupe Front National, vote contre du groupe Europe Écologie Les Verts, abstention du groupe Je suis Lorrain. Les autres sont pour. Abstention du groupe UMP. Pardon. Abstention du groupe communiste. Si le groupe socialiste est encore plus nombreux, je pense, les abstentions sont des abstentions. Donc en vote pour, j'ai le groupe socialiste qui est donc plus nombreux que, je compte 3 et 2, 5, 8. J'ai 8 plus 11 même avec les procurations, le groupe socialiste est plus nombreux. Donc ça passe. Très bien. Le rapport 2.14, il s'agit du soutien aux dispositifs.
Vous avez dit aux Inrock, justement, je rebondis sur Inrock, que les frappes en Syrie étaient une erreur totale. Ma question internationale. Vous dites, nous sommes fascinés par le droit d'ingérence, mais c'est une stupidité géopolitique dont on ne cesse de découvrir l'ampleur. Or, un mois avant, sur Public Sénat, vous apportiez votre soutien au bombardement russe. Alors, je voulais savoir si vous étiez un traître à la patrie ou s'il y avait un problème de raisonnement.
Saddam Hussein, whether they like him or didn't like him, he hated terrorists. He'd shoot and kill terrorists. When terrorists came into this country, which he did control and he did dominate, he would kill terrorists. Now it's a breeding ground for terrorists. So, look, the war is a total catastrophe.
Who do you blame?
And they have a civil war going on.
Who do you blame?
Well, there's only one person you can blame, and that's our current president. I mean, obviously, Rumsfeld was a disaster, and other people that are giving him advice have been a disaster. And Condoleezza Rice, who's a lovely woman, but she never makes a deal. Perhaps even worse, the rest of the world hates us. You go throughout Europe. I travel. I do deals all over the world. The Europeans hate us.
The Vice President, Dick Cheney.
He said the war was going fantastically just a few months ago, and, you know, it's just very sad. I don't know if they're bad people. I don't know what's going on. I just know that they got us into a mess, the likes of which this country has probably never seen. It's one of the great catastrophes of all time. Look, everything in Washington has been a lie. Weapons of mass destruction was a total lie. It was a way of attacking Iraq, which he thought was going to be easy, and it turned out to be the exact opposite of easy. You know, nobody talks about the soldiers that are coming back with no arms and no legs. I mean, the thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands, and the Iraqis that have been just maimed and killed. This war is a horrible thing. Now, President Bush says he's religious, and yet 400,000 people, the way I count it, have died, and probably millions have been badly maimed and injured. What's going on? Everything's a lie. It's all a big lie.
On Monday, George W. Bush will campaign in South Carolina for his brother. As you said tonight, and you've often said, the Iraq War and your opposition to it was a sign of your good judgment. In 2008, in an interview with Wolf Blitzer talking about President George W. Bush's conduct of the war, you said you were surprised that Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi didn't try to impeach him. You said, quote, which personally I think would have been a wonderful thing, close quote. When you were asked what you meant by that, you said, for the war. For the war. He lied. He got us into the war with lies. Do you still believe President Bush should be impeached?
Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake, all right? Now, you can take it any way you want, and it took Jeb Bush, if you remember at the beginning of his announcement, when he announced for president, it took him 5 days. He went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It took him 5 days before his people told him what to say, and he ultimately said, it was a mistake. The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake. So George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
But so you still think he should be impeached?
I think it's my turn, isn't it? You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied. Okay. They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
All right. Governor Bush.
When you had the World Trade Center go, people were put into planes that were friends, family, girlfriends, and they were put into planes, and they were sent back, for the most part, to Saudi Arabia. They knew what was going on.
This ridiculous individual, that is Mr. Trump, may be elected as President of the United States.
The great danger by attacking this one man is that we can fix on him a halo of victimhood. We give him the role of martyrdom, which can seem to be an advantage among those that support him.
I've heard of a number of cases where people have been excluded for incitement and for hatred. I've never heard of one for stupidity. And I'm not sure that we should be starting now.
You're talking about a candidate for the presidency of the United States. Isn't it up to the American people to decide whether his views are objectionable, not you guys?
Let's go to London for this one, and my colleague Max Foster. Max, listen, it's fascinating to hear all this back and forth, but let's just be real. I mean, Parliament they cannot ban Donald Trump from coming to the UK. So what's this really about?
What was the point? Well, there was this petition, basically, which gathered a huge amount of momentum and gained more than 500,000 signatures. And as a result, Parliament decided to hold a debate. And it's the first time I can remember where 3 hours of parliamentary time was dedicated to discussing banning one person. It normally just comes up in terms of questions to the Prime Minister, for example. So it was quite an extraordinary moment. It doesn't have any teeth. It didn't lead to a vote and a ban. The Home Secretary only can decide on that. But now she's got all of this information to consider, and if the debate rises, then perhaps she will consider a ban. But you felt some of it there. There was some really strong language. Someone called him bonkers, a wazzock. Others said he was poisonous. And there was only one voice, really, that supported his straight talking. Most people were very negative about him, but there was this firm split about whether or not a ban would help at all, because it would, as you heard there from Paul Flynn, who was leading the debate, it might bestow victimhood on him. That might help him in his US election effort. Much preferred in the debate was the idea to invite him over and to ask him to show people where these no-go areas are in the UK spoken about, and perhaps to take him to a mosque to meet British Muslims. So a strongly worded debate, no teeth, but does play into a debate which might lead to a ban, possibly, Brooke.
Why this hatred for George Bush?
Well, I just hate what's happened to this country. We've gone to a country that's no longer respected. We're in a war that we should have never, and by the way, I'm worse than any hawk there is in terms of military and in terms of defending ourselves. But Saddam Hussein didn't knock down the World Trade Center. He had nothing to do with it. And there were no weapons of mass destruction. There was nothing.
The Vice President, Dick Cheney.
Well, he's obviously a very hawkish guy on the war. He said the war was going fantastically just a few months ago. And, you know, it's just very sad. I don't know if they're bad people. I don't know what's going on. I just know that they got us into a mess, the likes of which this country has probably never seen. It's one of the great catastrophes of all time. And perhaps even worse, the rest of the world hates us. Rumsfeld was a disaster, and other people that are giving him advice have been a disaster. And Condoleezza Rice was a lovely woman, but she never makes a deal. She doesn't make deals. She waves. She gets off the plane. She waves. She sits down with some dictator, 45-degree angle. They do the camera shot. She waves again. She gets back on the plane. She waves. No deal ever happens. So, I mean,
You got to close a deal at some point.
You got to make deals. The world is dying to make deals, and we don't have the right people doing it. You know, nobody talks about the soldiers that are coming back with no arms and no legs. And I saw at Mar-a-Lago on Mondays, I make Mar-a-Lago my club that you know about.
In Palm Beach.
I make that twice now. On a Monday, I let returning Iraqi injured soldiers come to the premises. The most beautiful people I've ever seen. But they're missing arms and legs. They're with their wives. Sometimes they're with their girlfriends. And the tears are coming down the faces of these people. I mean, the thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands, and the Iraqis that have been just maimed and killed. This war is a horrible thing. Now, President Bush says he's religious, and yet 400,000 people, the way I count it, have died, and probably millions have been badly maimed and injured. What's going on?
You know, you've created a buzz. Suddenly there's a buzz going in the campaign. They like the fact that you're a straight talker. But you know what? The media elites don't like you. I was listening to the radio on some channels. They didn't think it was a good idea. The Daily News today put this picture, clown runs for president. And Charles Krauthammer had this to say about you last night. I want you to hear him, and then he will hear from you.
It was great showmanship, a stream of consciousness. I think his single most important statement was, I am very rich. That's the basis for the campaign. It will damage the party because, like, say, an Al Sharpton or even a Ross Perot, having those kinds of people on the stage who aren't really serious candidates diminishes the stature of the others who are.
So, according to Charles Krauthammer and a number of media elites, you're not a serious candidate.
Well, the New York Post gave me a front page cover that I wish you held that one up instead of the failing Daily News. You know, the The Daily News is going to be out of business very soon. It's doing no business whatsoever, and they do that for circulation. As far as Charles Krauthammer, I'm not a fan of his. I think he's a highly overrated pundit. He's wrong on so many things, including the Iraq War. And I've just never been a fan, and obviously he knows that, and I guess he's not a fan of mine, and that's okay. All I do is I speak the truth. You see my polls. My polls were great before people thought they were. In New Hampshire, I was number 3 and 4, and that was before I did this. Nobody thinks I'm running, so I'm doing well. But, when I watch a George Will or a Charles Krauthammer, I watch them for years. They're losers. They're just losers. They sit there. They haven't done anything. Think about it. I built a $9 billion net worth. I've employed tens of thousands of people. I do a television show. It becomes one of the biggest shows on all of television. NBC renewed it again. They're begging for me to do it. I write a book called The Art of the Deal. It's the #1 selling business book of all time. And I got a jerk named Krauthammer or George Will
Mr. Trump,
saying,
let me jump in here for a
he
minute.
doesn't deserve to be in
I'm
a
going to
race.
pick a
Hit like a steam hammer. The eyes of the giveaway. Oh, the legs have gone.
You've also supported a host of other liberal policies. You've also donated to several Democratic candidates, Hillary Clinton included, Nancy Pelosi. You explained away those donations, saying you did that to get business-related favors. And you said recently, quote, when you give, they do whatever the hell you want them to do.
You better believe it.
So what specifically did they do?
If I ask them, if I need them, most of the people on this stage I've given to, just so you understand. A lot of money.
Not me. Not me. But you're welcome to give me a check, Donald, if you'd like.
Many of them.
Actually, to be clear,
That's
he
right.
supported Charlie Crist.
Not Mike.
Gave Charlie
But I have...
Donald, if you end
I
your
have
campaign, I hope you will give to me.
Good.
Okay.
Sounds good. Sounds good to me, Governor. I will tell you that our system is broken. I give to many people. Before 2 months ago, I was a businessman. I give to everybody. When they call, I give. And you know what? When I need something from them 2 years later, 3 years later, I call them. They are there for me. And that's a broken system.
So what'd you get from Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi?
Well, I'll tell you what. With Hillary Clinton, I said, be at my wedding, and she came to my wedding. You know why? She had no choice because I gave. I gave to a foundation that, frankly, that foundation is supposed to do good. I didn't know her money would be used on private jets going all over the world. It was.
I'm glad you pointed it out because down he goes, the left hook. 23-pound weight advantage, and he put it all there. The right to the head.
No, we didn't see it yet. I'm
Well,
sorry. Here it comes.
There's the left
There's the hook to the body.
And
He missed the
with
right, yeah.
It was just the left hook.
He didn't wait for an invitation. Here it comes. Whoa.
I'll tell you, Michael Jack Johnson.
What you said when you said that the people across the border are rapists and murderers.
No. We're talking about illegal immigration, and everybody understands it. And you know what? That's a typical case. Wait. That's a typical case of the press with misinterpretation. They take a half a sentence. They take a half a sentence. By the way, they take a half a sentence and they take a quarter of a sentence. They put it all together. It's a typical thing. And you're with Telemundo, and Telemundo should be ashamed. And I'll tell you something. What's really going to be fun? I'm right now suing Univision for $500 million. And I want to tell you, we're going to win a lot of money because of what they do. So I just, again, I want to thank you. No, you're finished. You've obviously been proven to finish.
Coming in round one of this heavyweight fight. There it was.
Obviously, it was a mistake. So George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
But so you still think he should be impeached?
I think it's my turn, isn't it?
You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. Begin by thanking the people of South Carolina. This is a special state. Thank you.
Use that right-footed pivot, swing around on your opponent's side, and then cross.
See, he stepped back and did it again. Stepped off and around and ripped that uppercut to where Mathis was ducking right into it. 9, 10.
I'm proud of the campaign that we've run to unify our country and to advocate conservative solutions that would give more Americans the opportunity to rise up and reach their God-given potential. But the people of Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina have spoken, and I really respect their decision. So tonight, I am suspending my campaign. Yeah.
He should be doing a lot more movement than he is now. He's allowing Mike Tyson to trap him in the corner.
That'll be enough.
Surprise! I mean, first of all, this guy's a choke artist, and this guy's a liar. You have a combination.
This guy always goes.
You have a combination of factors. He
This
can't
is so
do it for the
typical.
obvious reason, and he
But
can't do
here's
it
the
because
typical
he
thing he
doesn't
does.
know how to tell the truth.
Fighter cannot be saved by the bell as the big right hand lands. Tyson knows he's got him in big trouble. If he doesn't answer it, Richard Steele has moved in and has stopped the fight. It's all over.
Some in the media are starting to come around to the idea that Donald Trump is not going away anytime soon, if at all. Tonight, Fox News media analyst and host of Fox's Media Buzz, Howard Kurtz, looks at a candidate few took seriously not that long ago. Good evening, Howie.
Good evening, Chris. The media have dismissed Donald Trump for months, first as a sideshow, then as a summer fling, then as a candidate who is bound to implode. Now National Review says the establishment is thinking the unthinkable.
The Republican establishment for the first time saying off the record, this guy could win. I don't hear anybody saying he can't win the nomination anymore.
I know all of us dismissed Trump early on, all of it, the so-called experts. I am beginning to believe he could be elected president of the United States.
He said, quote, "We are the ones that in this pipeline dispute helped destroy the government of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. We are the ones who invaded Iraq when there were no weapons of mass destruction, when Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11. And Saddam Hussein was very hostile to al-Qaeda, as was Gaddafi. Gaddafi was helping us fight al-Qaeda," Kennedy stated. He went on to say that, quote, "When we decided to overthrow these people, if you examine the real motives, almost always they serve the interests of large United States corporations who have an economic interest in the region." That is a strong statement coming from a very well-respected member of the Kennedy family, Robert Kennedy Jr.